Yeah.
When we do this for real, you have to make sure you don't have anything.
No, I do.
You got something on you.
We do this for real.
There are 3 traditional ways of self-development generally known in esoteric circles. These are the way of the fakir, dealing with the physical body, the way of the monk, dealing with the emotions, and the way of the yogi, dealing with the intellect. Common to these 3 methods of inner development is the demand for intense and isolated individual focus. In today's world, that kind of focus is impractical, and it's absolutely no fun, leaving the rewards of inner development out of the reach for most people. There is, however, a 4th way, where the work of self-development takes place right in the midst of everyday life. When used in conjunction with modern business planning strategies, these life principles provide folks with the means to overcome their obstacles and achieve their goals.
Oh, yeah, they do.
How do you know?
Because you started teaching me about the 4th way principles, and I started using them, and my life has changed. I have changed. And because I have changed, my life has changed.
And has it been easy? It's just kind of like you just read this stuff and then you snap your fingers and it all starts to happen for you? How does it manifest in your life?
How does applying these principles manifest?
Yeah.
Well, the starting point is through self-observation. And so observing a lot of the things I do, starting out there, just observing the things I do, has helped me to come to understand the things I do. It's helped me to come to understand the root cause of a lot of my behavior, both good and bad. And through coming to understand myself better in that way, that's the hard part, is being willing to, having the courage to really look at yourself. So self-observation is something of a magnifying glass.
So weren't you aware of yourself before you started trying to understand this 4th way concept?
I was aware of bits and pieces of things. Like, I wasn't one of those people who's just on autopilot, and I was immersed in a lot of things, like, you know, taking care of kids, working, taking care of horses, having a social life. But I wasn't on complete autopilot, so I was aware of certain things that I would do. But only at the superficial, at a surface level. Never really going down inside myself to the cause of the root cause of how I was, what my personality is like, the things that motivate me, the things that anger me, the things that get me sad. I didn't really understand. Again, the root is the best word I can come up with. The root cause of those things.
So
the origins.
there's this sense of the life that we were living before. If only I'm okay. If only I could get the world to understand me, and if only I could get people to behave in ways that were more acceptable to me, I'd be fine. If only I could get my boss to better understand me, if only I would get some recognition at work, if only these things would happen outside of me, I'm actually fine. And through self-observation, I became acutely aware of the fact that I wasn't fine at all, and that what was being reflected back to me from life was actually exactly what I was putting
out there. Yeah.
So then what do? Do you stop? Did you just try to change your behaviors?
So, you know, I think, like, this happens to a lot of people. You reach a point in your life, I called it my saturation point, where,
I like that.
You know,
hitting bottom, some people would call it.
Hitting bottom, yeah. I had all these things. I had this beautiful home. I have horses in my backyard. I had a healthy and very well-behaved child. You know, we were making money. I was married for 20 years. You know, had nice cars. You would think, on paper everything looked great, but I was 30 pounds overweight. I was stressed. I had panic attacks, and I could never. I remember feeling a panic attack coming on one day, and the first thing that would come into my mind as soon as I felt the panic was, "Huh, I wonder why this is happening now. Where is this coming from?" I'm
Yeah.
like totally sitting, in this wonderful life. Where is this anxiety
What's
coming
the
from?
panic? Yeah.
So that kind of became a shock. What is happening to me? I'm having these panic and anxiety attacks. And that started me to question, what am I attracting to this inner world of mine? I see what I've attracted outwardly. You work hard and you work smart and you get nice cars and you get fancy houses and you get horses and good kids. But I was all twisted up on the inside and I didn't know what was wrong. And I certainly did not have a relationship that I wanted.
So back to my original question, which
I
was...
went off on a tangent. I do that. I like to take the scenic route.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm here to keep you
I know.
on the original question.
Okay.
Not that you were trying to avoid it. I wasn't trying to project that. But the original question being, can you just change your behaviors then?
No. And that's like trying to go on a diet. It's so hard to, try to lose a couple of pounds and then there's this big fat jar of peanut butter staring you in the face and you're like, I'm going to change my behavior and I'm not going to stick a serving spoon in the peanut butter jar and eat 500 calories worth of peanut butter right now. So you can't, you can't just change it.
You can't just start being nicer to people? Or what behavior was it that you felt was something that you wanted to change about yourself?
I was yelling at my daughter a lot. So I was yelling.
So you just stop. Why can't you just stop yelling?
I tried. But these feelings of frustration would come up in me. It would just come up and I had no control. I had no control of my emotions.
So that's exactly it. We try to control the people around us so that we don't have to control ourselves.
Yeah,
we act out so that we don't... Control freaks, typically, we're the type that want to control everything except ourselves.
Yeah.
Because it's painful to come to terms with the fact that we are out of control and our lives are unmanageable because of it. And when you start to take back to the idea of self-observation, when you start to observe yourself, you come to the crushing realization that you're not in control of yourself. And then when you try to get under control, you come to another realization, and that is you can't. So what do you do?
Let me take a step back for a minute because I am a control freak and I don't want to control other people. My control freakishness comes from trying to control my environment. So I really like to clean. I really like to have things orderly, balanced, color coordinated, things lined up in a height order because I'm constantly trying to control this environment. And I do remember thinking to myself, if I could just create a sense of order and tidiness in my house and in my yard and in my barn, that I could find some peace. I wanted to find peace by creating order in my space. And what I kept coming up against was I could never get enough order in my space. My space was absolutely chaotic. And so my entire life became this never-ending struggle of trying to tidy up, trying to clean up, trying to get organized so that I could find some peace in that organization.
So in fourth way terms, or in what we're calling work terms, that would be called redoubling efforts, making wrong effort. I'll just work harder.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll just work harder.
And the stress that results from that leads to panic attacks.
That made me miserable working hard, and then I got resentful because I'm working so hard, and
your family's not cooperating.
Right.
Everyone's leaving dirty dishes around and tromping through the house with dirty shoes and all the things that families do.
yep,
And
yep.
so what is the difference now? If, in other words, how do you are you acting out less? Or do you find yourself yelling at your daughter less, or
Oh, way, way less. And there's this. You introduced me to this concept of being baited. So there's work that you have to do on yourself, for sure. But the environment that we live in can be very harsh.
yeah.
And the people that we're surrounded with, even people we love, can be very harsh. So, just like I have my personal faults, my daughter, my former relationship, her father, I would be baited by them for whatever reason. Let's say, kids are an easy example when they have a tantrum. They'll bait you with something.
Yeah.
They'll push your buttons. And I would allow my buttons to be pushed to the point where I would overreact. My emotional center would take over and it would be crazy. I don't take the bait anymore. Since starting to live under the work principles, I find that I see the bait when it comes. I recognize it as bait, and now I understand that I don't have to react to it.
But why not? What does the principle have to do with not reacting? There's got to be something that you're doing that's different. It's been a gradual change, or did it all change at once?
No, it was a gradual change. So, one of the tools, so there's this principle, don't take the bait. I don't know what principle we would call that one. We haven't talked about that.
Well, the principle is to understand baiting.
Or self-observation.
So you observe what the other person is doing, and you become aware of what they're up to.
So that,
and then you explode the game. You get yourself off the playing field.
right.
So when that person starts to bait you, you say, if I react in any way, shape, or form, I lose. So I need to find a way to lift myself out of that place and get off of that playing field with them. Then they're down here doing all this baiting, and it doesn't affect you anymore. You're emotionally free.
You're totally emotionally free from it. There is a freedom. There's a liberation from having your buttons pushed. So the principle of getting off the playing field has how do you you hear this all over the place. You hear it all over Facebook. There's all these memes that go up. You should do this. You should just let it go. Be the bigger person. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, that would be great. But how? How do you be the bigger person? How do you let it go? How do you forgive?
Yeah.
So the work has given me tools, what you call them aims. And one of the tools that has allowed me to not take the bait is to create space. So if someone's baiting me, someone wants to push my buttons, rather than follow this habitual response of, and reacting.
Yeah. Which is painful, right? I mean, it hurts to be in that place.
It really hurts to be in that place.
In some level,
like
it tastes good, but at the
yeah.
end of the day, it
Yeah.
never. It's painful as hell.
It tastes good when someone comes at you with something that's painful to you, like a tantrum, or they want to control you, whatever it is, whatever the bait may be. When someone comes at you with that, it is a painful thing. And I have these habitual responses, which is, let's fight. I'm a fighter. I like to be angry and tough, and you're going to bait me, well, then I'm just going to pop you one, mentally.
Yeah.
But,
Tongue lashing.
yeah. I used to be proud of the fact that I could, cut somebody down with 5 words or less.
I remember that.
I can reduce somebody to tears with 5 words or less. And that was something I was proud of. So, so now I have these tools which allow me to create some space between the bait and my reaction. And that's all I focused on, was creating space. I didn't set out to change my behavior, to stop getting angry, to stop getting all wrapped up in their turmoil and their drama. I simply said, I need to create a buffer zone. And that was extremely hard work.
Well, creating this void, right? This
Yeah.
this space so that you have an opportunity to actually choose something different is the hardest thing. And then when you have a baiter, you have to literally like lock yourself in the bathroom, which your bathrooms don't have locks, so that's kind of hard. Find a place to get away from that person because they're so accustomed to getting in there. They'll keep poking and digging until you finally give it up, and then you're on the playing field with them again.
And they want that negative reaction from you.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of codependent relationships that are that way. One person in the relationship will bait the other into giving that first person what they need, what
Yeah.
they want, and it's sort of this reciprocal relationship that way. And it happens a lot. Like for me, it happened a lot between me and my child. That she wants something, I don't want to give it to her. She'll bait me. I'll resent it. The pain comes. And then, you blow up.
There's a huge explosion, and then there's this
Huge
coming back together again. I'm sorry, I
Yep.
didn't mean to explode. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that to you. And then the cycle
Continues again and again.
perpetuates. And
So,
it happens in marriages, it happens between
yeah.
siblings, it happens from parent to child to parent. And so, but I want to dig into this one little piece of this before we close, and that is this idea of how a principle helped you. Like, what is the actual tool? Is it the principle?
It was the awareness.
The awareness.
It was
Okay.
the awareness. It was being able to catch it when it happened. And you can't catch it unless you're looking for it, right? You have to keep your eye on the ball.
So you have to have seen it a whole bunch of times and not judge yourself for it. Like I've got this aim to not react, and I keep reacting. Right?
That came second.
Then it's the baiting, right? I keep getting baited into this. Then it's now you've got a general awareness of the cycle and how it happens.
Yep.
So then when it comes at you, you've got this. You've already created this space so that it doesn't have to. You don't become identified with it. You don't have to become trapped in the same old behavior.
It did not. Nope. It did not trap me. And let me tell you, it does feel like a trap. You feel like you have no choice but to react to somebody's bait.
And
that
so
way.
one more thing. So in how does that affect your daughter now that you have changed that cycle? And of course, it's never changed completely. The old behaviors hang out and they come back and bite us in the ass once in a while. But
Yeah.
how has it helped her, or has it made her life worse because she doesn't have the same relationship with you anymore? What has it done for her personally and for the relationship in general?
The transition was difficult for her because children come to expect a certain type of dynamic between them and their parents. And as the parent, when I started to change that dynamic by not responding to her bait, she was upset because it was something she was familiar with. Like, I stopped yelling at her. She would bait me, and I stopped reacting to it. And that was very frustrating for her. And I remember at one point she said, why don't you yell at me? I'm familiar with that. I'm comfortable with that. That's
Yeah.
how we work together. What was your question?
How has it changed
How
the
has it changed?
relationship? So
So now I don't yell at her. And so once she went through that transition of recognizing that there was a new dynamic between she and I, her behavior has changed as well. So she's now conditioned to not bait me anymore. If she needs something from me, she can now ask in a healthier, more forward way.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't bait me as much because I don't take the bait. And that's simple conditioned response.
Yeah.
So there's a lot less yelling.
Have you found that
Going
you've
on
had to
in this house.
replace those old behaviors with new behaviors? In other words, positive type things that weren't happening before because there wasn't space in your relationship for it?
Yes.
Was that an effort in and of itself to begin to say, I need to spend different time with my child than I used to, and I actually want to? Or it's a kind of a leading question, but
It is a little bit of a leading question, but it's still a process. I'm now at a place in my work, in fourth way work, I'm at a place where I can now proactively start to think about how do I want to spend my time differently with my child. Like, I'm still just coming out of that don't react phase. and starting to test the waters with, let me take her down to the beach for a walk together, just her and I, and engage in conversation and be fully present with this person who's not just my child, not just my responsibility, not just, a burden. She's
Yeah.
actually somebody I want to spend time with. How do I want to spend that time with her? So I'm coming out of this reactive, overly responsible mode and now into a proactive, what can we do with this new dynamic? How do we want it? What do we want this relationship to look like?
So you indirectly changed your daughter's behaviors,
Absolutely.
the behaviors that you were trying to change directly by working on her. Through working on yourself, you've set her free to become the beautiful young woman that she's becoming, and it's really quite magical to see it happen right before your eyes, isn't it?
Doubling my year efforts, I used to say, I'm trying to get this kid to clean her room or pick up after herself or whatever it was. And I would say this all the time. I have tried 6 ways to Sunday to get her to understand this, to get her to do this. And 6 ways to Sunday is just another way of saying I'm doubling and tripling my efforts to no avail. What do? I find the work, I come up with this little tool that helps me to make some space, not take the bait, and suddenly she's doing all these things I couldn't get her to do for the previous 10 years.
And she feels better about herself, and there's all kinds of opportunity for her. And you can see how changing that history between the two of you will have a trickle-down effect for her and her children, that you've broken
The cycle,
which comes from, no blame on our families, but it comes down through our families. It's in our culture. We're all aware of it at some level. We're all immersed in it. But when you really take responsibility for it, you can actually enact real change just through observing what's happening inside yourself.
It's changed. My life is different because I'm different.
Well, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to our first episode of A Conversation with Buck and Helena, and I hope you'll join us again.